So welcome everyone. We are very excited to have you here. I'm going to introduce you to Maureen Owens. Maureen Owens is a French teacher from Forest Hills High School. Maureen Owens has been teaching all levels of French in Queens for the last 20 years. She has a PhD in French literature from the Graduate Center, CUNY, and a master's in teaching French from l'Université de Paris, La Sorbonne. She's training this year to become a host and facilitator of citywide Office of Equity and Access and Teacher Career Pathway Virtual Lab Classroom Visitation. For the last several years, she has worked on creating the Checkpoint B Word Language Exam. She is very, very committed to making French a lasting and meaningful part of students' lives. This effort includes integrating a variety of authentic material, taking trips to Lincoln Center, New York City museums, the local French bakeries, and Paris, as well as inviting Francophone members of the community into her classroom. So without further ado, Mrs. Owens, we are very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Marisol. Thank you for all those kind things you said. But thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm so grateful to be here with you. It really means a lot. And I'm excited for sharing some of these ideas. I was looking forward to being in a classroom where it would be slightly more intimate and where we could share ideas with each other. But hopefully we'll be able to use the chat a couple times throughout and we'll be able to communicate with each other. And my hope was to finish with breakout rooms so that we could share a few ideas that we have with each other. So I would like to begin. I'm going to share my screen and start presenting. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. Thank you to all for coming. I'm so very grateful to you. All right, so I entitled my presentation, Overcoming the Obstacles of Using the Target Language 90% or More. I think that Activable has had the 90% plus goal for many years. And yet when I walk down the hallway, sometimes I hear a lot of English. And so I know all my colleagues are super dedicated, super talented, fabulous linguists, and I have so much respect for them. So I've just been wondering, like, what is it that prevents people from using the target language all the time? And that's what we're going to discuss today. So as Marisol said, my name is Maureen Owens. I'm a French teacher at Forest Hills High School, and I have included my email. If anybody has any questions after the presentation or wants to talk about these things, I'm really very passionate about pedagogy, and I would love it. So please, please, please don't hesitate to contact me. All right. Again, I was planning to be in the classroom, but I would like to establish just a little bit of protocol. I think it's important to remember that we're all at different paths of the teaching journey, so we should be kind to each other. Though it's easier when we're on Zoom. You don't have some issues you might have in the classroom, but let's just keep that in our mind. And I didn't realize when I was creating that Jessica was going to be the keynote speaker, but I really love this quote. She says, "The expertise is not at the front, but throughout the room." And so I thought that could be a guiding thought for how we interact today. But I also think it's really powerful as I walk into the classroom every day. The knowledge is all through my class, and I am not the center of knowledge. I'm just, making it pop out here and there. So let's keep those protocols in mind. And if we could use the chat, I would love to know who you are. Why are you here today? What made you choose this session or to come to this PD? And what do you hope to accomplish? So I hope, Marisol, could we use the chat for a minute? And maybe people could just give me a quick introduction to maybe where they teach or what grade or what goals you might have for this particular presentation. Marisol, will that work? Can we do the chat now?
Yeah, we have the chat open. It's fine.
Wonderful.
So anytime
right.
you want it.
I see it. Okay. Thank you so much, Marisol. Thank you, everyone who participates. I find using Zoom a little bit challenging. So if I can at least kind of see into your brain and say, oh, yes, I know Carly. Thank you, Carly, for coming. And I saw that Rashan was here, and to get a sense. I'm grateful for you all to be here. I'm grateful for you sharing. And I think there's a wide variety of situations that we find ourselves in. I see some people in IB and some people in middle school, 6th through 10th grade, beginner, and so forth. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for coming. I'm grateful to you all. This is how I decided to break down my discussion. First, I would like to talk about what are some of the challenges? What are the reasons behind not using the target language the whole time? I would like to understand our goal. What are we trying to do and why? I would like to share with you a few methods that I use in my classroom. I know that Ellen is here and that she was going to present. She has very different methods. So I am not in any way espousing the idea that there's one way to do it, but I hope to share with you some things that seem to work for me. And my hope was to stop at a 45-minute marker, and we could all have a few minutes in a breakout room to just kind of share what we learned and maybe create something or a plan for something very practical at the end. It's the end of a long year, and it's great to have something practical that we know we can use for the beginning as soon as we start next year. Whoops, I'm sorry. All right. I chose this cartoon because I feel it epitomizes who I am in the classroom. That it doesn't matter what is going on. I'm just going to say, en français, s'il vous plaît. So this makes me laugh, but I think it's worth considering and wondering, what are the risks of using the target language all the time? And what is it that prevents us from doing it more? And what is to be gained by using the target language a little bit more? So I really loved what Jessica did to suggest that you take a minute. You could maybe jot ideas down on a piece of paper next to you, or if you were willing to share in the chat, I would love, I'm going to take a minute. Let's stop for a minute so I can read what's in your chat. And also for you all to have a minute to just think about, where are you at with your use of target language? Do you use it 90, 95, 98%, or do you maybe use it 30% because of various structural difficulties that you're confronted with? Great. Thank you again to everybody for sharing. Thank you for communicating. I do love talking about this, and it's great when it's not just me doing this monologue. Thank you. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Carly. I see that you say, yeah, classroom management, that is definitely an issue. I've spoken to lots of teachers as I was preparing, and people seem to think, oh, it's level 1. How can you possibly use the target language the whole time? So I appreciate, oh, thank you everyone for being very honest and very helpful. Great. This is so helpful. I'm so grateful to you all for using the chat and for just kind of letting me know who I'm speaking to and where we're going from there. So hopefully you shared in the chat. And if not, maybe you have a piece of paper next to you that we can refer to at the end, see if we made any progress. I'm going to go back to the presentation. Thank you again, because it's really important for me to know where I'm at and who I'm speaking to. I'm grateful to you. Sorry. I think one of the issues, that I like this cartoon as well, and I know that it's a psychoanalyst's office and it's not the classroom, but I still think that it speaks to teachers are talking and they feel that the person on the other side doesn't really understand them. And so I think our greatest fear in using the target language is this idea that we're not communicating, that when we go in there, our number one goal is communication. And perhaps if we use the target language all the time, we won't be doing that. When I ask teachers, why they didn't use the target language more. Some people told me that they thought that it was unnecessary. A colleague who I love said, if I just translate izquierda, left, that does the job. And so I don't think it's so important to be using it all the time. Some people, I believe, think that they think it's inefficient. Certainly, it does take longer for students to process if you say sortez le livre, saquez la tarea, and students have to think about what that means. And so there's some people who believe that it's inefficient to use the target language the whole time. Many teachers who I spoke to said that students are really hard to engage after having spent so much time learning virtually and they're being in the own world. And even when they came back this year in September, I found talk to your partner in the beginning. It was a struggle for them to just turn to the person next to them and say, hello, how are you? And so this one I really do believe is a challenge that confronts us all, that students come in, they want to go on their phone, they're piping music in their ears. One of my most common sentences that I say in the classroom is, tu écoutes de la musique ou tu écoutes ton professeur? And I just want to make sure that they know, like, no, this is class time. I hope you're listening to your teacher. A lot of teachers said that, like, if I were to use the target language all the time, students wouldn't understand me. And that's our job, I think, to bring them along to the path that they will understand, but certainly that is a valid risk. And some people that I spoke to said that they would like to use the target language, they're just not exactly sure how to go about it. And so that's what I would like to talk to today. When I was doing my master's at the Sorbonne just 3 years ago, I had this fabulous professor, and she said that when you walk into the classroom, you have to be very clear about where you're at. What are your ideological compasses leading to? And she said, because otherwise you're going to be pushed by administrators, pushed by students, pushed by parents, and you're pushed in every direction, and you kind of get lost. So I hope you'll forgive just a very brief 2 slides about theory, but I think it's important for me, and I hope that I can persuade you, that if you go in with this center of this is what I believe, it will really feed you through those moments of difficulty, those moments when you look and the students have glassy eyes because they don't really understand you, or because they completely misunderstand you, or something's going wrong in the class. I think you can take a deep breath and you can think about Chomsky. So Chomsky believes that we all have a language acquisition device, sometimes referred to as a LAD, and it's not something we can see on an MRI. We can open up the brain and we can say, oh, there it is. But it's this belief that we can all human beings, this is our innate natural gift, be able to learn language. And sometimes when my students are struggling, I say, if you were to speak to a 2-year-old in Senegal, they would be able to say this. You can do this. So I believe, and I try to communicate to my students, that we are all hardwired to speak language. And therefore, it's just my job to give them a sufficient amount of input. And once they're exposed to enough language, they will acquire it. Again, like, there might be frustration with toddlers being able to communicate their idea, but they succeed. People who are 3 and 4 years old, they speak their language. And I believe that my students at the end of French 1, they can speak the language. They can't say everything. But even in our native language, there are many ideas that we can't express that are difficult, that if we haven't practiced and repeated, we'll have difficulty with. So I believe that people really can learn language in the way that we can breathe, or we can blink, we have reflexes, we can learn language. The other theorist that's really important to me is Stephen Krashen, and I think we're all familiar, but for me, I need to think about his N+1 theory, this idea that most learning is going to happen when you just make it slightly more difficult than the level of the students. And so when I'm speaking to my students, I think, did we learn this vocabulary? Are these words that we all share? Are there people in this classroom who know this word because it's very similar cognate to English? It's a cognate to Spanish. It's a cognate with Russian. Can I call on those people to help me decode what I'm saying and make it more obvious to the rest of the class. And I know that I can sprinkle in just a few words that are not in our common lexicon, and that students will understand the message anyway. Because if you don't have too many words that are above their level, then it can be successful. And that's when you're growing their knowledge and their experience and their ability to decode. And my third pedestal upon which all my pedagogy lies is this idea of multimodal learning. And so in the very beginning of school, I like to talk to my students about the brain. I think that they'll believe you. This is scientific. This is known to be true. And what I tell my students is, if you all come in and you just write down the notes, you will have some action going on in your brain. If you take down some notes and you listen to the teacher, you're going to have even more action going on in the brain. But it's when you listen and you write and you speak that we have exponential learning. And so I always do this exercise, like first day, second day of class. Imagine that you copy down the do now and you have 3 dendrites being grown in your brain. And then you listen to somebody reading it, you'll have more dendrites. And then you turn to your partner and you say something about this, you'll have even more dendrites. So I say, for an example, let's say 3 plus 3 plus 3. What do you think? How much action is going on in your brain? And students inevitably say 9. And I say, no, it's exponential. When you turn to your partner and you speak, we have exponential learning. It's as if you had 27 dendrites growing in your brain. And so these are the ideas that I start with. And if we can all believe this, then I believe you'll do what I'm asking you to do in class. My final idea is just this very brief. I just want to talk about bell hooks very, very briefly. I recently came across this article, Democratic Education, and in it, she talks about how enchanting it is to learn. And when I read it, I thought, yes, that is what is happening in the language classroom. So I'm just going to read the last bullet point. Learning and studying are demanding tasks that not only generate satisfaction, but are pleasurable in and of themselves. And so I think we can use the language and show students how much joy and pleasure we can get from communicating in another language. And when we do it, even just somewhat successfully, I know that it creates joy in me, and you can see it creates joy for our students. Also, at the beginning of the year, I want to make sure that I have buy-in from my students. So I'm asking them, what are the reasons that you're here? Why are you sitting in this seat? What do you expect to get out of it? And so I have these different websites, 10 good reasons for learning French, or 17, or 10, or 11. I have a video. I'm giving them lots and lots and lots and lots of language. Immediately they see, like, oh, this is week 1, but I can understand some of these things. I can figure this out. I can make the connection between this word and this picture, or my own belief of why I'm here, this reason. And then we make a poster that we put in our class, and it stays there for months, about what are our own 10 reasons. We do it in French because we do everything in French in my classroom. And the most important reason that I try to convince students, this is my idea and this is what I share with them, is that we're there because it's fun. And so if we can get students to believe that there are practical reasons we're there, of course, we all want the seal of biliteracy. I absolutely want that for my students. But for the day-to-day, moment-to-moment, we're there because it's fun. And I hope that if I can convince them of that, then we can have more opportunities to just use the language all the time. I would like to thank Jenny Lynn Delfini for sharing this slide with me. For me, it was a really important metaphor to see her describe this at the last PD in January. And so she teaches elementary school, but I think it really is very powerful. This idea that language is like using different blocks of Legos. And each time you see or hear a word that you understand, you're adding a language block. And with those blocks, we can do amazing things. Uh, uh, So when you learn the verb to be, or you learn how to add adjectives, you're adding it and you're creating and you're making these marvelous things. And then when you go from year to year, from chapter to chapter, you can create a whole city. You can really create this entire architecture. Oh, so sorry. Of very amazing things. And so I know that we all have different posters about the path to proficiency and the ice cream cones and the path and so forth. But for me, this Lego idea was something that I thought would speak even more to students, that we're here, we're putting it together piece by piece, and then we can do truly amazing things. How do we do this? I would suggest that a lot of it's done just through the use of routines. When I first started teaching, I wanted everything to be new and exciting, and I thought class should be different and trying out new things every day. But what I've found is that it's actually the routine that anchors us, and that when you have the same routine, then it allows you to be creative in the middle. And I personally really learned this lesson when I was doing yoga. So again, on my sabbatical, but I did lots of yoga. And you go into yoga class and they say, okay, downward facing dog. And I don't think anybody in the room is thinking, but we did this yesterday. Why are we doing this again? And I think it's the same thing for my French class, that we start the class the same way every single day. So when they come in, there's something on the board, and I immediately say, turn to 3 people, ask them how they are, and téléphone dans la poche, so that they know, okay, phone's away for now, and we're just going to ask 3 people. I think that it's that how are you in the very beginning of class, comment ça va, that allows people to say, okay, I'm turning my brain to my French brain, no more English. And then I ask students, what class are we in? And they tell me. I ask, what's the date? What's the aim? What's the homework? And I don't know how aware the students are of this, but I take pride and joy in the fact that this grows. So in the beginning of the year, I say, what class? Class. And I usually do a multiple choice. Are we in the biology class? Are we in music class? Are we in French class? Are we in Spanish class? And because of that multiple choice, using cognates, in French, biologie, musique, sport, they're going to know, oh, yeah, this is the French class. And then somebody will say français. And I say, oui, français 1, français 2, français 3. And again, because it's the multiple choice from the very beginning, there's somebody that will say français 1. And then I usually check in with 3 or 4 people. And I say, quelle classe, quelle classe, quelle classe, quelle classe? And then, okay, enough people have got français 1. I know for the rest of the year, I'm good. But the great happiness for me is now that we're in June, I have students who say, today we are in the French 1 classroom. And so we've grown from just French to today we are in French 1. And I think that's useful to have that. You can always refer to that sentence. You know, we are, you know, the word today. It's again, an anchor for their knowledge to grow. For the date, in the beginning of the year, I have 9 September. And then as the year goes on, we're adding the days of the week, we're adding the year at the end. For the aim is frequently words that they don't know. So again, my philosophy of like, let's anchor it with the words we do know. Everybody knows comment. You know comment because you just asked your partner, how are you? And maybe you know another language that's similar. And then I say, utiliser. What do you think that means? Oh, like utilize, use. People can usually figure that out. And then maybe they don't know la langue cible, and I'm going to tell them how to use the target language. And so that's the one part where I'm like, this is what we're doing. I will give them the English for that. For each marking period, we have a different thing that we're talking about. So for this one, I put in the weather. The weather is not always my favorite thing to teach. I find it difficult because I think that you don't give them enough for them to just be able to turn on the radio or listen to the weather report and really understand it. But what I found was that when you start teaching things like it is sunny, and my students would come up with, I think today it is sunny. And somebody says, no, I don't think it's sunny. And so even though we were speaking about something very basic, very simple, it is sunny, suddenly there was this communication going on. And somebody says, no, it is cloudy. And then the next person says, no, it is neither cloudy nor sunny. And so we start just like with the other things where it's a very simple statement and then you're making it bigger. We do the do now, what activity are you doing? And then there'll be pictures usually on the board and I have students write. And then this is the most important part, and this is just all the warm up in the first 5 minutes of my class. I say, okay, now speak to your partner and tell them what activities you do. Sometimes I need another 30 seconds, 60 seconds to finish my attendance, to do something like administrative. And I say, okay, now speak to a different partner. And I want you to tell them what you don't do. And now use the negative and tell them what activity you don't do. So already within the first 5 minutes of class, students have spoken. They ask 3 people how they are. We've gone over the routine. They've done whatever that focus is for the day, which is activities, and they've spoken to 2 people about it, hopefully in a positive way. And then I also ask them to always reinforce the negative. Another key part of my routine is at the end of the class, we have to take a minute and say, did we learn anything? Let's just breathe and think about it. And so I ask my students, what did you learn today? And they have to tell me 3 things. Sometimes it's just a word, sometimes it's a concept or a sentence or something. But then again, you got to turn to your partner and tell them these 3 words. And frequently I'll stand at the door. I would say goodbye to everyone. I say, okay, tell me what's your favorite word today? And then on their way out, they say, today I learned the word nonsense or new or crazy or whatever. And so it's just a check-in with them that they're learning. But also it's growing that N. When Krashen says N+1 and they go out and they tell me what words I learned, I know that we can all use those words from that moment on. In addition to the routines, I think we need scaffolds. So my room is got posters everywhere. The most important to start is that I say, like, what are the rules? What are the expressions that we need for school? And so everybody makes a poster and they're all over my room. And so the most important one is speak French. And the second one is speak louder, because sometimes students are shy or reluctant or scared or whatever it is. But if we don't speak so that we can hear each other, then I say that's not really effective. So let's speak louder. But all of these expressions are things that they've come up with that we want to know all the time. And so if they want to say something to me in French, they say, hey, I know we all know, can I go to the bathroom? Can I go drink some water? Oh, I'm sorry about something. Then they can tell me because they have the poster right there that they can look at it. Sometimes people want to express something and they just don't have that verb conjugation. And so the verb conjugations are all over. And the present tense, the past tense, and so forth. And then I also have posters from the projects that we've been working on, which for me, I think is really a memory. It's like, remember when we were learning about Molly? Remember when we were learning about animals? And I think subliminally, at least it's giving them a message of, think of all that you do know, all that you can create. And when you get stuck, there are these things to support you. They're the scaffolds. And so use those and don't give up. Keep speaking, keep trying in the language. I like to show them how valuable it is to speak French. And so many students today, they're motivated by higher grades. And I think people just see it when they do all these activities, when they're turning to their partner, their language grows and their grades get better. I hope that they're having more fun. We're playing games, and at the beginning of the year, at least, sometimes I motivate them with candy. And then there was a girl, she looked it up Google Translate. Can I have another candy? I said, sure. And suddenly everybody in the classroom wanted to know, can I please have another one? And so I gave it to them. We had a contest with Duolingo, and I brought the class that had the most XP points in breakfast. I think it just serves this message that we're all having a good time, we're all having fun, and we're all doing the same activity. When I ask my students what classes do you like and why, frequently they'll say that French class is a good class, they like it because they can make friends. And then the language serves their immediate needs. If they have to go to the bathroom, if they want to charge their phone, if they want to do these things, they have to be able to do it in French. So I hope to provide them with that motivation so they can do it. Because I'm in the virtual lab classroom with Marisol, I have this video of my class, and I would like to just very quickly show you one quick minute. This is in the middle of class. This is my student, Nicole, and I hope you can hear it. Oh, sorry, let me just try one more time. For me, that was an important moment of having Nicole, like, who cares whatever the lesson was about that day, but the idea that we can communicate whatever our needs are. So she's cold, she can ask, can we close the window? Can we close one window, two windows, and so forth. And so I was really happy with that they know how to say I'm cold or I'm hot and communicate all that in French. I have projects around the room, and then the classes speak to each other. So this orange Post-it is a French 3 student responding to Gabrielle's project. And so I want to communicate with them that this language is not just for us. We're using it every day, hopefully all day long in the class, but with people outside of the class. And that's pretty motivating too. I also try to have Zoom callers and guest speakers come in. So in this left corner, this is actually my son, who's a computer science major. And so when we were talking about technology, we did a really quick Zoom with my son, and the students would come up in front of the computer. They say, hello, my name is John. I'm 14 years old, and my question is. And it was fascinating for me. First of all, I could just stand in the corner. I didn't really have to do anything. And the students could see that the language was working. And I could see what they were really interested in. So they were talking about ChatGPT, or they're talking about video games. They're talking about things that they are interested in using the language. In the middle, I had somebody come in, we have career day, and he was talking about gardening and composting. It was amazing to me. The students were talking about nitrates in the soil and these scientific conversations that I wasn't even sure of. But the students in that particular class were in the science track, they could talk about it. We frequently have French students come and they visit our class. All of these are just occasional messages to my students that what we're doing in the classroom really does serve the purpose of being able to communicate with other French-speaking people throughout the world. Sometimes I have students who come back and they want to say hello, and I pull them into the class and they have to still speak French and they have to tell us what they're doing. So on the left, I have Leslie, and she wanted to tell us about her study abroad. On the right, 2 students who were applying to medical school. And I think it's important for my students to see these students who still speak French and who are coming back and who are successful, so that they can project themselves in that way. French is the language with which we do this. Every year, we are invited by Unifrance to visit the Lincoln Film Festival. So I think, again, it's this idea that the students are working, they're all together. And they go. And I would like to share this very brief video that Amanda made for me.
Every day she would pick a student to have a little 2-minute conversation before the bell rings, obviously in French. And I would love it when she would pick on me, so I get to show off all my French skills and everything that I've learned so far. And it was just so beautiful. It was such a beautiful process of learning. Towards the end of the year, I still remember she took us to watch this movie called Choisis d'aimer. It was the premiere. And we had a chance to speak with the French director towards the end. I wanted to ask the French director a question in French because he didn't speak English, right? So I wanted to ask him a question because I was very curious about a point of view of the movie. And I was very insecure in myself. I was nervous. So I told myself, Amanda, you can be insecure in yourself, but right now, you have to put all your trust in Miss Owens. I remember her passion, her hard work. I remember the impact that she had on me. So in that moment, I put all my faith in her and I said to myself, I'm going to go up and ask the question and have this little conversation because I'm not scared. And I did, and we had a beautiful moment. I was able to ask him a question, and he responded. And he loved my point of view. He loved my French. He asked me if I was if I was French, and I remember looking back at Miss Owens, and she had a great smile on her face. She was so proud of me, and she made me very confident in myself.
So what I like about Amanda is that, the language is not just what we're doing in the classroom, but we're doing it in the classroom so that you can go outside of the classroom and you can use that language. Amanda also referenced in her little clip there that I do seize every moment before class or maybe after class, or if I see you waiting to go into the bathroom, or if we pass through the cafeteria together. And I'm always asking my students, comment ça va? I know that Jessica and Jill have already referred to this book about high leverage teaching practices. And the thing that I got most out of this book was the idea that the greatest leaps of language learning happen in those down times. It says in the book that when you're passing out papers and you ask your student, hey, did you win the basketball game yesterday? Or you're collecting homeworks and you say, are you feeling better? I know you were sick. That's actually when they're using and learning the language. And my students know this, but I'm going to ask them, comment ça va? How are you? So I wanted to show you one example. I know Rashawn, I saw was here before, and he came into my class, and he met this student, so he can speak to the fact that they're so sorry. So this is my student, Kevin. He had been out for 3 weeks. And I was like, Kevin, where were you? Why were you absent?
Bonjour, Kevin, comment ça va? Ça va bien. Pourquoi es-tu arrêté comme ça? Oh, pourquoi tu es allé au Guatemala? Qu'est-ce que tu as mangé au Guatemala? J'ai mangé steak et très bien. Tu as mangé de la cuisine guatémalienne? J'ai mangé français. It's called churrasco. Très bien. Qu'est-ce que tu as bu? J'ai bu du jus d'orange. Oh, des jus de pomme. Et des jus de pomme. Et des jus d'ananas. Aussi, très bien. Et de quelle couleur est le drapeau guatémalien? Il y a un aigle.
Voilà. So what was amazing to me, first of all, that student is in French 1. He knew absolutely no French in September. He is very smart and he does speak Spanish at home, so I understand that makes it easier. But students see it all the time, every day, like, wow, that kid next to me, he just spoke sentences and sentences about his trip to Guatemala. We were doing the past tense. So I was asking him, what did you eat? What did you drink? That was our chapter. But then we always want to recycle. I always want to remember the things that we did in the past. So I'm asking him about colors and the flag and so forth. Again, what amazed me in this was that we did the simple past, like drinking, eating, doing, and he had learned on his own, I went to Guatemala. And so he knew that I was going to ask him that question, and he learned it. Recently, I asked two girls, why were you absent yesterday? And they said, oh, I went to my sister's graduation. And when they said that, I said, wow, I never taught them those words. How is it that they know that? And they knew that I was going to ask them why they were absent, how they were, and they learned it on their own. So that was very exciting for me, that the students know I'm going to ask, and on their own, of their own volition, outside of class, they're learning so they can participate in that conversation. I was fascinated that Jessica said something very similar to her, so I hope you won't mind that there's a little repetition. But what are we doing with language? We're creating the community. And how does the community happen? It happens by telling stories. So I'm just going to give you one quick example. We're always asking, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? And they say, oh, and you, Miss Owens, how are you? And I one day said, oh, I'm so tired. Can you imagine why I'm tired? Turn to your partner and think of 3 reasons I might be tired. So, that only takes a few seconds, but again, they're working with their partner and come up with reasons. And again, I love that Jessica it's like a call and response. I give them the beginning, I'm tired. They give me why. And so they say, are you tired because you didn't sleep? And I say, yes, I didn't sleep. That is true. You are right. But why? And then someone says, are you tired because you have a lot of exams? I say, yes, you are right. I have a lot of exams to correct. Correcting being the word that they maybe don't know, but then that's that N+1, just putting in a little piece. They say, are you tired because you did running yesterday? And I said, no, not because of that. So there's this back and forth where they're using the language, I'm using the language, they're guessing, I'm telling you if their guess is right. And then I just tell them this little story about last night, I went to the opera with Fernanda. Do you know Fernanda? And they know Fernanda because she was the chaperone when we went to the movies. And so then I can talk about her. And the story was that I went to the opera in Italian and I don't speak Italian and I didn't understand it. And I thought that we would understand it, but we didn't. So now I need to know another language. And wouldn't it be great if now I learned Italian? And then at the end of my story, I say, okay, now turn to your partner and tell them what you understood. You can do this in English or you can do this in French. And the students work together really quickly. It takes 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and they're figuring out what the story, oh, I heard this, and I understood that, and I heard this, and I heard that. And I say, okay, qu'est-ce que vous avez compris? What did you understand? And then they say, I understand that you went to the opera. And I write that down on the board so they can see it. The people who don't know the word opera, they can see it. I understand that you went with, somebody said, with your daughter. It's like, that's not my daughter. And then somebody says, no, you went with your student, your old student. And I say, yes, that is true. And then we're reconstructing the story together. So I think students like it. They have a tiny little insight. I don't do this every day, but there are moments where you want to share one little thing and we're constructing the story together. And again, the joy, the satisfaction, the pleasure, they understood me. This was not a textbook. This was not scripted. This was the night before. And then I come in and I want to tell them why I'm a little tired that day.
Professor Owen?
Yes.
It's 10:45.
Okay, so I'm just going to finish up. I will share my slides with everyone. Edutopia did a great thing about lowering the stakes for language learning. So they say, give it a fun atmosphere, give students a role in running the classroom, give all the students the opportunity to participate. I think that's really important, that some people you ask complicated questions to, and then the person next to them, oh, this person struggles. I'm going to ask a very easy question. I want students to always have a way out. They can always say, I don't know, je ne sais pas, and I move on to the next person. They can say it's because I'm tired or I'm stressed or I'm worried or whatever they want to say, or they can just say, I don't know, and I move on. We help each other. So if the person next to you knows the word, they're always encouraged to provide it. We celebrate our successes and we encourage each other. This is the end. I'm at my conclusion. So thank you, Marisol, for helping me with the timing. But I wanted to ask you what you thought would be most helpful for you to take away from this. So is it about the beliefs? Do you believe that it can happen? Is it about routines? Is it about designing your classroom, what you put on the wall and so forth? Is it about learning how to tell that story, that call and response that Jessica was talking about, that we can tell the story together? I didn't get to talk about the personalities. Sorry, that'll be another time. Is it ways to teach the students, to show them, to prove to them, you're learning this and it works? Is it using activities that are so fun that the students just absolutely want to use the language so that they can participate in it? So what I wanted to do was open it up to breakout rooms. We have a lot of people here. I don't know if we can do breakout rooms.
Please tell me, I need Jasmine, Margarita, tell me how many groups do I open? Meanwhile, you give the task, Maureen, because we don't have so much time. So tell me, please, how much time, Margarita, how many groups?
So,
how many people do you want in the groups? About
I think like 6 or 7 per, so maybe 20.
Right, 20.
And then
20. Okay, so let me know when
I'm ready.
What they're going to do.
Great. So go into the breakout room and then you can discuss what it is that you found was most helpful. I wanted to model my method of you think first, then you're going to discuss it in the breakout room. What was most helpful? What was useful? What can you use in your classroom? And then maybe we'll say in 6 minutes, we'll come back and that way will give us time to share with the larger group. So
20 groups, sure?
Yeah. Yes, I think that would be good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Jasmine, Margarita, can you see the chat? Because I'm just make sure that everything is fine.
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you so much to you both.
Riel, Canina, Carmen, do you need help with the groups? You should have those smaller groups. A lot of people.
Sorry. I didn't expect many people.
You did awesome.
Hi, everyone that is here. Maybe you can do a group here if you cannot go to a breakup rooms. And I'm going to monitor time because we need to close on time. So, okay.
Maybe I've been paying attention. I think we have about 4 more minutes.
Yeah. And Maureen, if you can leave me at least 2 minutes to close before, because we need to close at 11 sharp as we have the other.
Oh. Okay.
Freddie, Jude.
Hi.
Hi. Let me know if you want to talk here, guys, because I think at this point, you want me to send you to a place? Let me know who is and where do you want me to send you? Rafael, Bielka. If you need help, Freddie. Jude, I cannot monitor the chat as well.
Jude just said, love creating pockets of self-made posters for classroom rules and expectations around the room.
Okay, Jude, what is your last name? We need your last name, please, for your
Yes, I can change his name.
Thank you. Hi, Rafael, Freddy, Xiaoyu, Vilka, Eva, Zoraida.
Hi.
Hi. If you want to participate, because at this point, I don't think we will be able to send you to breakup rooms. So if we can talk about what Maureen asked.
Was there anything that I mentioned that you would find helpful?
I would say that in the beginning of the school year, from the first day, to use the target language, to set the expectation for all students to use the target language in the classroom.
And what do you think would make that easier?
Well, maybe when speaking, using sign languages like actions. And also use a lot of cognates in the lessons with words that sounds like bench to English.
I do think that helps, and to teach them how to do that, right?
And
So-
modeling too. Modeling helps. So if they don't know how to answer a question, like, do you like the color blue? Which color do you like? You can ask it another way. Do you like the color blue, yellow, red, orange? And maybe they get what the question's asking.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maureen, I'm closing the breakup rooms, okay?
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then we'll just ask for a few people to, maybe.
And Eva Ramos said, I think routines are very important to encourage more speaking in the target language.
Thank you.
And Maureen, if you can give me the last 2 minutes, like 10:58, to be able to finish, okay?
Okay, so I'm just going to ask like 3 or 4 breakout rooms what they think.
Thanks everyone for coming back. It will be lovely if you can have your cameras on, if you can. Thank you so much. Just to see your faces, thank you so much. Thank you everyone that has the camera on. And please make sure to have your name and your last name, because then in my record, I need your name and your last name to be able to give you the CTLE credits afterwards. So make sure that you have your name and your last name in the screen. Thank you.
Alfredo, I don't know you, but thank you for coming. Can you tell me what you discussed in your breakout room?
Yes, we're talking about dealing with the multiple levels of how you have very advanced students and beginner students.
Mhm.
So yeah, in some cases I've had students working on their own because they can read 100 Years of Solitude, but they're still in in level 1.
That is
They put them in level 1 because we are not the primary subject. So they only have one level.
Mhm.
Have them working on their own, yeah. And whenever possible, have the advanced students helping the lower grade students.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Ellen, what did you guys talk about in breakout room 1?
You're putting me on the spot there.
I am. I knew I could count on you.
Thanks a lot. We loved the routines, and so a lot of us really loved the routines. And then I said I skipped some of your steps, which maybe I need to not do, and I expect them to say the full date from the get-go. But we did love those beginning routines and just getting them to speak and to each other. And I think that's good also for us to get the lesson up so they see it and all of that, like giving yourself some time to.
Yeah, it actually makes it easier for the teacher when you're always saying like, okay, turn to your partner, tell them 3 things you did this weekend, or tell them your top favorite 3 colors or whatever. Usually I use 3, but I think that then that gives me time. And that it's also your way to monitor, right? If they can do it or they can't do it. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for sharing. Anybody in breakout room 2 who's willing to share what you talked about? I could call on somebody else I know.
Sure, I'll share. I think our group also discussed the routines and how important they are, especially in languages. I added to that it's also an opportunity for those students who might be more advanced than others, also to be able to challenge themselves and share. And for those that are not, to perhaps pay really close attention as the other students are sharing, that they are able to pick up or maybe even ask follow-up questions. Having taught for 30 years outside of New York City, I know that there is a privilege that the city schools have lost in many ways because there are less and less classes within the school. Whereas in the suburbs, you have the different levels and even heritage native speakers program, which a lot of times are not available in many of the city schools. So continuing to really identify your students and be able to target the population and, you know, be able to address the needs of each population is very important. And I think our speaker offered many different ways of doing that. And we wish we had more time to discuss.
Thank you. And with that note, I'm going to just say thank you to everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. And I would like to pass it off to Marisol because we want to respect our time limits.
Thank you so much. First, I would like everybody to please, if you can turn the mics on, and we're going to shout and say thanks to Maureen. 1, 2, 3, in any language.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great, and it's a fantastic start conversation. Thank you. Please remember to put all your ideas in the Padlet to get, we also, you know, we will have a raffle. And thank everyone here for being so flexible. We all, yesterday at 3 o'clock was, oh no, oh yeah. So thank you so much for being here. And you have the Padlet, and I'm going to let you leave. So we will see you in the next sessions that you will also have 2 options. At 10:15. So without that, thank you so much. Merci, Maureen, thank you so much. Another thank you. Bravo, gracias. Thank you so much. See you in the next one. Bye. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you.
Are we going to have access to this video, to this recording?
We will
later?
send everything later with Jill once we finish this. Let us just move on the day. And we will send everything in a, Candy will send them, okay?
Yes, because I would love to go back, you know. And
yes, we will send everything. We're just trying to move in this new virtual program, but we will send everything. Don't worry, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gracias, Marisa.
Gracias, chao.